Hi everyone, my name is Zoe Kessler and I'll be your host this evening on behalf of PsychCentral.com. Before we introduce tonight's presenter, I'd like to remind you that you will be able to access the complete webinar online at Psych Central's YouTube channel a little later this week. And if you haven't already checked it out, Psych Central has videos and webinars on a wide variety of mental health topics with guest speakers from many, many disciplines. Now, during tonight's webinar, I'd like you to feel free to ask questions by typing them into the question area on your control panel. And we will try to answer everyone's questions, but we'll also do our best to wrap up the session within an hour. So again, welcome everyone, and I'm so glad you could join us. And I'm excited to have presenter Renee Jain. We've never had Renee present for us before, so this should be something really fantastic. She's also she's a Psych Central blogger, and her blog for us is called Stress Better. She's got her master's in positive psychology, and she's the founder of the award-winning GoZen and GoStrengths programs. They're known for transforming research-based concepts into engaging learning modules to help anxious children. Listen to me, I'm an anxious host. So I'm sure you'll want to check out her website, and I know she'll tell you a little more about where you can find out more about her work. She's a contributor to Huffington Post and Edutopia, and I think the important part is to welcome Renee and have her start her presentation. So hi Renee, good evening. How are you?
Hi Zoe, I'm awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Good. I am thrilled to have you here, and I'm looking forward to the presentation. Now I'll just let people know that it's going to run about 40 minutes or so, and again, if they want to send in questions as we go, that's okay, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Great.
Love it. Send in questions.
Okay. Well, I am just going to turn it over to you and mute my microphone here and enjoy the presentation with everyone else, and take it away.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Zoe. So we are here today for 9 things that every parent with an anxious child should try. As Zoe said, my name is Renee Jain. I am the founder and chief storyteller of GoZen, and I just wanted to pause on my name for a second because I know it looks like Renee. It's a little gift from my parents. It's Renee. It rhymes with Jeannie, and if my brother were here, he would tell you it rhymes with weenie, but please don't call me that, at least not to my face. I wanted to say that you are in the right place if you're looking for some solutions for your child's anxiety, especially in the moment of the experience, in the throes of anxiety. If you want to understand what's going on with your child, why they're experiencing chronic worry, if you want to feel empowered again as a parent, if you're feeling a little out of control or loss of control, this is the right place. And if you're looking for fun tools, and I say fun because this is such a heavy thing that our kids are going through already, so why not give them some fun to help alleviate their worry? So if any of those things apply, you're in the right place. Welcome parents and professionals and educators. I want to tell you a quick weird story before we dive into the meat of the material. So I live in New York, but I grew up in Chicago, and when I lived in Chicago, there's always traffic in Chicago, and I was a commuter, and whenever I would drive to work in my hour-long commute, I would see people do the weirdest things, and one of those things was this image that I have here is someone playing a game. But by far the weirdest thing I have ever seen anyone do was this. I really saw someone do this. I saw someone driving while they were shaving, right? So they're old school style with a razor and shaving cream, completely distracting. And the reason that I bring it up is because in this age of technology, I know that you might have other devices out, you might have other windows open, you might have kids around, and it's so easy to get distracted. So if you're a swiper or if you're an alt-tabber or if you get distracted easily, I would say let's transport ourselves back to the 80s and let's all try to stay present with one another. I will honor your time, make sure I'm timely, and I will pack this with information. This will be so good if we can all stay present with one another. So let's do that, and I want to tell you the plan. I'm going to go over some super important lessons. We're going to interact, so please keep that chat box handy. I'm going to tell you something new that's going on here at GoZen. We'll do some question and answer, and then you will get some awesome gifts. So I have been presenting for a while, and I've been running GoZen for a while, several years, and I get some of the same questions. And so what I have done is for you, if you can stay with me until the end of this webinar, I've created some bonuses for you based on those common challenges we face. And one of them is 72 phrases to calm an anxious child, either in the heat of the moment, you know, in that kind of really, really anxious period, or right after. So it's a little ebook for you. We've gotten a lot of feedback that it's very helpful. So I'd love for you to have this, and I have several other bonuses for you. So I'd love for you to stay with us until the end. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and I just want to mention that I've been on a lot of webinars and master classes, or I've been to classes before, and the teacher will say, okay, now I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. And then 30 minutes down the line, they're still telling you a little bit about themselves, which is fine, but you're kind of like, what about me? So I want you to know that I am here for you. This is about you, but I want to tell you just a tiny bit about me, because I feel like with understanding my background, you will, the information I give you, it will enrich that information. So just for a couple minutes, when I was growing up, this was me. This is what I called outside Renee. It's a nice Indian girl from a good family, not really a rule breaker. And at my best, I'm funny, playful, and creative. Those are, I guess, my strengths. But for most of my childhood, this is what I felt like. Chronically worried, wondering what if, sleep deprived, struggling socially, absolutely, not resilient, could not face challenges and get back up. And I was something I call falling inward, falling into myself. And my worries varied from what if no one asked me to the dance, what if I fail the test, what if I can't do it, what if they see I'm different, what if, what if, what if? And I have to tell you that I have kind, compassionate, loving parents. And in my house, a portrait of worry looked like this. What if I fail the test? You'll be okay. Well, what if I do? You won't, I promise. How do you know? You have to trust me. Are you sure, Mom? What if I fail the test? You studied, you know this, I love you, you're not going to fail. So all of these things, no matter what my mom would say, I would come back to worrying. And I saw that it was tearing me apart inside, but also tearing my parents apart and my brother. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to put an end to this. I was a huge Star Wars fan, and so I made a plan to build a force shield around myself and not let anything hurt me anymore. And so I feigned indifference. Probably one of the scariest things our kids can do, which is to fake it. So instead of recognizing and feeling my emotions, I denied them. I disengaged from them. And it's interesting because when we do that, when we try to quash how we feel, instead of the feelings going away, they just own us. They define us. But I knew I wasn't going to live in this state. I made a plan. I had this roadmap, and I could probably stay on the slide for the next hour, but I'm not going to. This is probably the worst plan. I think a lot of people have this plan. One of the worst plans I could have made, but this was it. I said, listen, I'm miserable now, but I'm going to be happy. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get good grades and get into a good school. I'm going to get a good job, have a good husband, have my 2.2 kids. Happiness, right? This was my roadmap. This was the plan. But I never learned the skills of resilience. Let me repeat that. The skills of resilience. So right around here, that good husband part, I was mired in a very messy relationship. I was still extremely anxious inside and still quashing it down. And I had a massive panic attack. Now, on the other side of my life, I was this entrepreneurial prodigy. So I had, this big business I was running. I was 24 years old, and I walked into my office one day, and I passed my staff, and I opened the door to the bathroom, and I walked inside, and I fell on the floor. And I thought I was having a heart attack. I had the biggest panic attack of my life. I walked out, drove myself to the hospital, and told the doctor, I think I'm dying. I'm having a heart attack. And he said, you're not having a heart attack. You're having a panic attack. And it was that moment I decided I needed to make a change. So this blessing came to me, or I found this amazing therapist who suspiciously looks like Freud, right? But he pulled from many schools of thought, and it was the first time in years that I let my feelings arise without judging them, just getting to know who I was and what was going on inside. And I had this aha moment while I was there. I had this aha moment, and I said, does anyone have a time machine? Does anyone have a time machine? Because why didn't we teach all of these things to little Renee? Little Renee could have learned these things. She was sophisticated enough to learn them, as are all of our children. So from that moment, I decided to make it my mission to teach kids to thrive. Again, my name is Renee Jain. I'm the founder and chief storyteller of GoZen.com. I teach kids skills of resilience through fun media. But really what I do is I teach kids skills I wish I'd learned when I was a kid. And this is just a little snapshot of myself and GoZen, in case you're not familiar. And now that's it about me. It's time to turn my attention. And if you're ready to do this, if you can just type in the chat box, let's do this. And Zoe and I will see all of that. Let's do this. If you guys are ready to do it, let's do it. Okay, awesome. Let's do this. Everybody's ready. Cool. Let's do this. So here we go. Number one. I get a lot of flack for this, but I'm going to say it anyway with conviction, and I'm going to explain myself. Stop reassuring your child, and let me explain why. So this is Nellie from our GoZen program, and she worries, right? And she has an amazing, loving parent who comes, who tries to reassure her. So you're a parent, parents try to reassure their children with whatever love and compassion and empathy and, every tool that you can think of. You say it's going to be okay. You say, I love you, trust me, it'll be okay, let's problem solve, I feel you. You use everything that you have in your power. And your child still worries. So now when that happens, can you just put in the chat box, how does that make you feel? How do you begin to feel when you can't help your child? A little, frustrated, confused, out of control, inadequate? Yes, okay. So I think I have a lot of those feelings here. Absolutely, of course. We can't help our children. We want to help them desperately, and we can't. And I'm showing Nellie sitting nicely on the sofa. We know that anxiety often manifests in much bigger emotions, anger, frustration, freaking out, really panic attacks. And when that happens, you see your child like this and you can't help them, you feel helpless. But here's what I want to tell you, right? In the moment when your child is experiencing true anxiety, they're in the throes of it, inside their body, it looks and feels like this. An alarm has gone off. They have gone into fight or flight mode. They are having a stress response. And eventually, if the two of you are like this, there's just an eruption. So I want to come first to this huge myth, which is this, that you should be able to control your child's anxiety. We can't. We can't. We need a mindset change. You are your child's guide through this challenge. They are going to face their own challenges in their life, and we won't be able to control that. You are your child's guide. And in this, your goal is to react, not to react, but rather to respond. So your goal is not to react, but rather to respond to them. And the challenge in that is leaning into the discomfort of how our children feel. You know, it's funny because we do these things called timeouts where we send kids to their rooms when they display these big emotions, or to the side of the room to a calm down area, whatever. And we are teaching them to suppress and diminish these emotions because they're so uncomfortable. But by doing that, we start to teach them to numb the pain with whatever provides the quickest relief. And when we numb, eventually kids start to take the edge off of their pain with a whole bunch of stuff that's not healthy, right? So here's another myth. Children must change their negative emotions. I would like to propose a new lens. Children must change their relationship with their emotions. And this is how you are going to guide them, right? So what is needed of you as a parent is to tap into your inner what? Can you guys put in the chat box what you think this might be? So inner child, inner Zen, inner Buddha. Okay, all of those are wrong. I'm just kidding. There's no wrong answer. I ask parents to tap into their inner YODA because most 99% of people that I run into have seen Star Wars, and Yoda is, yes, a Jedi master and a very cool guy, but what he really is a mindfulness master. As a parent, when you're frustrated, angry, confused, all of those things because of what's going on, I feel you. I understand you. Not only do I work in this space professionally, but I have a 2- and 3-year-old myself. I totally understand. What's needed is for you to tap into your inner YODA, slow down, tap into the force, which are your greatest strengths. Think about those. To be able to give your child heart-centered advice. And I'm being a little esoteric right now, but I'm going to get very practical in a minute. But I want you to understand this. This is what your child needs of you. This leads to nothing good, right? Eventually leads to this, and it leads to an explosion. To tap into your Zen, to tap into that YODA when your child is experiencing pain and frustration and anxiety, when they're having these big emotions, creating scary scenes, trust me, I understand they're socially unacceptable, repetitive, irrational, all of that stuff. The first thing you need to do is to freeze, and I'm going to explain what that means. And then you're going to empathize, educate, so this is the problem solving, right? Don't jump into the problem solving right away. And then you're going to let go of all of that parental guilt as you harbor so much of it. But the first step, again, is to freeze, right? Step into your role as a Jedi Knight. Remove the emotional charge from your reaction. When your child is reacting extremely emotionally in their charge, bring your charge down. Shift the energy. Create a bridge and connect. And you know you are connecting with your child when they look at you and they either say out loud or they give you an indication that you get it. Think about it. Who are the people that you share the most with? The people that get it. You need your children to feel that way, to say, yeah, you get it, Mom and Dad, you get it, and I want to open up to you. Once you have that connection, you can move into empathizing. And there's a lot that goes into empathy, right? Empathy, everyone has a different empathy language, so there's no one way to empathize, but there are certain things that you can try with your child. Label emotions. I see you're angry or you're anxious, right? That you have to do homework. spell it out for them. Sometimes children do not understand what it is that they're experiencing. Labeling it gives it a name, right? Label their reactions. I can see you're tightening your fists and you're breathing fast. It looks like you're getting angry. Teach them what their cues are. It looks like you're getting anxious, right? Teach them what's going on with them so they can start to identify their own cues. Give permission for the emotion. It's okay, we all get angry, right? This is hard to do. It's okay, we all get angry. We don't necessarily give permission for the behavior, so it's not okay to hit, right? It's not okay to lash out physically, but it's okay to get angry and anxious. Touch. My hand is on your shoulder. I love you. You're safe, right? And sometimes a child doesn't want to be touched, so how about I'm giving you some space? I'll move right here, but I'm not going to leave. I'm right here with you. This takes practice. Fail you will, if practice you won't, Yoda says, right? So one way to practice is a lot of times when we get into that moment with our kids, we say, oh, I read all these books, I heard all these presentations, I cannot remember what to do. So I borrow something from Harvey Karp, the author, called the fast food rule. I love this rule. So if my mom worked at McDonald's and I were a customer, I would come in and say, I'd like a burger and fries, please. And then my mom would say, let me repeat, you would like a burger and fries, correct? So if you get into, your child is having a very anxious experience and you want to get into that YODA space and you want to connect with them. If I say I'm worried and my tummy hurts, then you can't remember the fast food rule. I hear you, you're worried and your tummy hurts. They teach this in active listening classes. It's a way of saying, I hear you, I see you, I feel you, I get you. I'm not invalidating. And it's a simple thing to do. Address the anxious body. You're safe, I love you. Let's breathe like a Jedi. So I get a lot of parents saying, oh, my kids are rejecting deep breathing. That's okay. Let's make it fun for them. And if they reject it, don't force it on them. There are other ways to calm an anxious mind and body. I know it's not comfortable. It will pass. I'm here. This bottom one is huge. We need to learn as parents and to teach our children distress tolerance, a little bit of it. I know it's not comfortable, but it will pass, and I'm here with you, right? Empathy statements, I hear what you're saying. That sounds frustrating. I'm going through these ones fast because I'm giving you that 72 phrases document at the end. But again, I want you to know I know how hard this is. I'm always practicing. These are my little ones, Jude and Jasmine. They were dressed up as cowboy and cowgirl for Halloween. So I just wanted to share with you a little bit of my life. I understand. And I'm going to give you this awesome bonus number 2, 21 ways Yoda finds his Zen. So if you're finding it hard to find your own patience, your own peace, your own calm, and you're feeling anxious because of your child's anxiety, you're going to get this awesome bonus. And you're also going to get this 3 research-based self-compassion exercises. You need to be kinder to yourself, not because I'm telling you to give your, not for a warm fuzzy, but if you have a goal, then you are going to better reach that goal by being kind to yourself than beating yourself up. And let's also teach our children and model for them to be kind to themselves. So this is another bonus that you're going to get. And if you guys are still with me, let's move on. We're going to move through many of them quickly now. You must understand the origin of worry. Okay, so here is, let's start with a myth. Your child should be anxiety-free. I know a lot of people feel this way because they're saying, listen, my life is turned upside down because of this anxiety. I want them to be anxiety-free. I think that this is part of a very clever marketing campaign that's been going on for years and years about stress and how it kills, but we don't want our kids to be anxiety-free. There is a reason that we have a stress response. Back in the day, this is what we teach in the GoZen program. We had the cave people, and they needed some sort of mechanism when they were in danger, right? To run away or to fight or to flee, right? The fight or flight response. So when this happened, the saber-toothed cat jumped out. The old brain takes over. So we teach this to kids, right? The old brain, the green part right here, takes over. And the newer part of the brain, problem solving, reasoning, language, all that stuff, is put on hold. It's the reason why it's so difficult to think logically when you're very worried. It's the reason why your children are not receiving the logical messages that you're sending to them when they're really worried. A worry alarm has gone off in their brain. Danger, danger, there's an alarm. Then there is a neurochemical response going through, their entire body is flooded with chemicals so that they can fight or run away, right? We call this the worry alarm. But the thing about the worry alarm that you have to remember is worry is protection. Worry keeps us from touching a hot stove. Worry is good. I know this is hard for you to look at this slide. There's an element of worry that is good. It's part of the human condition. And I'm going to prove this to you by asking you two really quick questions. You can answer them to yourself or feel free to put them in the chat box. So the first question, we don't want to get rid of worry. Okay, the first question is, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? So little to none, an average amount, or a lot. And you can, again, answer in the chat. Don't worry, it's private. Nobody sees it. Or you can answer to yourself. Okay. Now, which statement do you believe more? That stress is harmful or that it's enhancing? So which one rings more true to you? And now I want to tell you something. We're getting a lot of A's, by the way. There was a study done on 30,000 Americans, approximately 30,000 Americans, where they followed them for about 8 years, and they asked them these two questions. How much stress have you experienced in the last year? Do you believe that stress is harmful or enhancing? And then they determined that if you experienced a lot of stress in the year prior, there was a 43% increased risk of mortality, right? That's not great. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker to this. That was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful to your health. This is mind-boggling. I was explaining this to my dad the other day, and he just was kind of like, huh? So why is that so interesting? Why is that so interesting? Because it is only the people with the mindset that stress is harmful coupled with high stress that increase the risk of mortality, right? Actually, when they got down to the nitty-gritty, those who had high stress were less likely to die than those who had very little stress, as long as they believed stress was enhancing. So here's the myth. Stress kills, stress is bad for you, we should live stress-free, it's causing chronic disease, early death. Look, there is a lot of research that this is based on, obviously, right? But what you don't hear about in the news is there's a strong and growing body of research that shows us stress can enhance performance. And I want to tell you about one more study that's super important before we move on because it's very relevant to our children. So there is a professor named Jeremy Jameson out of the University of Rochester, as professor of psychology. And when he was in high school and college, he played football. And he always wondered why his teammates before a game would say, oh, they're amped up and they're so excited and they can't wait to go play. But then when they would get into a test, they would say they're a ball of nerves, they're choking under pressure. When it was that same adrenaline, those same stress hormones that he knew were running through their body, right? So he had an idea about testing mindset because this is about mindset. He had two groups of students taking the GRE, which is an entrance exam into college, and he split them up into two groups, right? Stress is enhancing was one group and focus if you're stressed was the other. So in the stress is enhancing group, he gave them a pep talk. And he said, if you experience stress or anxiety, try to channel those feelings and know that you're experiencing that because your body is preparing you to take this test, that it is going to help you with this test. And then he told the other group that if you feel stressed during the exam, just focus. That's all he told them. So here are the results. Who did better on the GRE practice exam, and then 3 months later, with no other intervention, better on the real GRE exam? The stress is enhancing group. All they did was give this group a pep talk, explaining to them that stress isn't a killer. Stress can actually help you rise to the challenge, right? So what I want you to take away is stress can be enhancing, and there are benefits of it, and we don't want to get rid of it. And in fact, there are 3 different types of stress responses. So if you've ever read any psych book or anything on anxiety, you probably will have heard of the fight or flight response. But there's also the challenge response, the one that helps you rise to the challenge, right, before test taking, before public speaking. And there's the tend and befriend response. So if you're the type of person that gets very stressed out and then picks up your phone and calls your bestie, that's the tend and befriend. It encourages us to make social connections. So we can get our children into this energized, focused, work feels effortless area, right, in this middle section. We want to bring them down from distress. I understand that's why you're here, and we're going to do that right now with the rest of the tools, but I really need you to understand that stress is not our enemy, right? Anxiety is not our enemy, and yes, I am using them interchangeably right now, but the response is a mimic. They mimic one another. What causes some of a child's greatest anxiety? Can you put in the chat box what you think is the answer? School, home. One of the greatest sources of anxiety is having anxiety. When we label our kids to be anxious kids and they have anxiety and they know that they do, and it becomes a stigma, it becomes this thing, I'm the worrier. Let's take that away from them. We're all worriers. It's part of the human condition. Now, worry can go haywire, right? And you're saying, look, worry's going haywire in my family. What do we do about that? This is such an interesting image. This is Tomas from our program. He is thinking about something in the future, a dog, and he worries about dogs. They trigger his anxiety. We are arguably one of the only species that can think about something critically in the future and then trigger a physiological response in our body. So just from a thought, you can trigger the stress response in your body. And of course, if you're lying down, you're not fighting or fleeing. There's nowhere for that energy to go. So you begin to feel uncomfortable, right? All of this can happen from a thought. But I want you to keep this in mind before we go through the other tools. The goal is to stress better. The goal for your children is not to be stress-free. It's to stress better. Okay, so if you're still with me, let's go ahead and type in I'm with you in the chat box. I'm with you, I'm with you, I'm with you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, tool number 3, bring your child's worry to life. Now you're probably saying, seriously, why are you telling me to bring it to life? I'm trying to put it to bed. Worry is a very interesting thing. If you ask a bunch of people to explain anxiety, children or adults alike, they'll get little bits and pieces of it. But, you know, sometimes my stomach hurts, I worry, so the word worry comes in, right? But it's hard to explain. It's why this slide is blank. If you've ever heard of the movie Inside Out, they actually just won an Academy Award for Best Animation. They have taken emotions and personified them like anger and disgust and happiness and joy and put them in a child's brain. And the reason that they did this is because emotions are hard to understand, right? So I want to tell you that in the GoZen program, before this movie came out, way before it came out, we personified the thinking brain and the worried brain with these characters Till and Whittle in the mind. And that's how we explain worry to a child, really of any age. And the benefit of having characters, like Whittle the worrier, for example, is our character. The benefit of having characters is that you can talk to the character. So we teach the kids that we work with, you can talk to your worry. So this is Nellie, and she's saying to Whittle, please don't loop my thoughts or make them like a broken record. She's retraining her own brain. She's talking. This is a form of self-disputation, right? It is a very powerful way to go, I don't say negative and positive thinking, but I say accurate thinking. So retraining our worry. So make sure if you have a child of any age that you have a character for them. And, you know, the older they are, pull it from pop culture. If they're into Star Wars, I use a lot of Star Wars references. So maybe it's a dark Sith Lord, right? Okay, tool number 4, teach kids to be thought detectives. So what's the anatomy of a worried thought, right? So this is our cave person again. He sees a stick, but for a flicker of a second, his brain thinks it's something evil, right, nefarious. So he exaggerates it. It's a snake. It's a big snake so that he'll survive. His brain is thinking, listen, you're wired to survive. You need to survive. But the problem is that worried thoughts are notoriously inaccurate and exaggerated. They're not to be trusted. So one thing you can teach your kids to do is when they have a worried thought, an anxious thought, they need to ask themselves, is this really true, right? Is this really true? And then they can collect evidence supporting or negating that. What evidence supports your thought? Kids love to be thought detectives. Say you're a detective, you need to find the evidence. I'm not going to say that you're wrong. You said you have, you're having a hard time making friends and this really worries you. Okay, let's talk about the evidence. You went to Joey's birthday party last week. I think he might be one of your friends, but then you did say you had a hard time finding someone to sit with at lunch. Okay, I understand that supports what you're saying. So have them collect evidence and they can even debate themselves. This brings us back to accurate thinking because thoughts are what? If you can put in the chat box, thoughts are what? Notoriously, yes, liars, inaccurate. Okay. Tool 5, allow them to worry. Right? Allow them to worry. You're not going to quash all the worry, but what you can do is you can put boundaries on it. Create worry time for them, a time of day where they're, 15 or 20 minutes, same bat time, same bat place every day, where they write down their worries, right? And you can put it into a little box and call it the worry box. Now, what happens with a worried thought is worried thoughts lead to worry stories, right? So I'm not going to do good on this exam. I'm not going to get into the honors class. I'm not going to get into a good college. I'm not going to have a good career, right? Snowballs. So what I want you to do is let your child write all their worried thoughts or their worried stories, put it in the box, and then the next day pick out one story and just say, all I want you to do is create a different plot line. It's okay. Let's just say, yeah, maybe you were not going to get into college. You're not going to have a good career. You're not going to have all that stuff. But what if it went a different way? So create a different storyline that could be more accurate. And let's start rewiring our mind in this way. So this is an exercise to allow them to worry. So you pick one story out of the box and ask your children to write a new ending or a new story, right? So if you're still with me, this is one of my favorite sayings, don't try to steer the river, Deepak Chopra. If you have an idea of an interpretation for that, what it means, go ahead and put it in the chat box. What do you think that means? Okay, Deepak talks a lot about mindfulness, right? So I want to go into that right now for tool 6. Going from what if to what is so important for our children. Did you know that 47% of the time we're thinking about something other than what we're doing? So you might really be engaged in what I'm saying right now and still be thinking about the groceries you need to buy tomorrow or what happened yesterday or what happened this morning or what you have to do, in the following week. We just do it. And it's amazing in some ways that we're able to think about the past and future. We're time travelers, really. It really is. It's amazing. Imagination is amazing. But the issue for an anxious child especially is that anxiety is triggered by past and future thoughts for the most part, right? So we can teach them to practice mindfulness, and if you're scared of that word, it doesn't have to do with this is my misconception of mindfulness slide, so it doesn't have to be uncomfortable postures and boring exercises, right? We can teach our children to observe their train of thoughts. This is a simple exercise. Your brain is like a busy train station and you have a train of thoughts coming in all the time. And they're going to just come and they're going to pass. And sometimes they sit over your head and you're going to feel uncomfortable. But I promise you, if you sit with that discomfort and you just watch your thought as an observer, you're going to see that it goes away, that the train goes away and the thought dissolves, right? So simple exercises, and they love these things. They love exercises like this. Kids are very open. Kids are a lot more open. In my work with kids, I've worked with adults for a long time as well. Kids are very open. They're like, okay, I'll try this. Try it with your child and see if it works. So if you're ready for more, type in the chat box, let's learn more. We got a couple more here. Avoidant behavior is so common with anxiety, and I feel you, right? I avoided half of my childhood, so I get it. When things cause anxiety, you start to avoid going to parties, walking to school a certain way, visiting the people who own dogs. Whatever's causing the anxiety is what you avoid, because frankly, sometimes you just feel like, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this. I just need to avoid it. So of course you probably intuitively know, I don't have to point to the research, that avoiding makes the anxiety worse. It does, right? So what can you do instead is break it down for your child. So here's my example. What do you do if your child is scared of going to the store but really wants to buy licorice? Gradual exposure. I call it laddering because I don't like the words gradual exposure. Let's say they want to buy licorice. Create a ladder, you can draw it out, and put mini goals from the top to the bottom. So the first goal is to walk up to the door, then walk into the store, go to the aisle. You get the idea. They try to do each goal, and you repeat the goal until your child says, listen, I'm good with this goal. I can go up to the door. You know, I'm bored of this now. I can move on. Let's go to the next one. So gradual exposure, this is good for school refusal. It's good for a completely avoidant behavior, essentially. So number 8, so if you're still with me, type laddering. Let's see some laddering. All right, call it out for laddering. This is a lot of people tell me that's one of their favorite tools. Tool number 8, the essential tool. So I'm going to tell you a very, very quick story. Does anyone remember this guy, Captain Sully Sullenberger? Okay, so he was Captain Sully Sullenberger, right? He was a pilot, and he knew from a very young age, like the age of 5, he wanted to be a pilot. He took his first flying lesson at age 16. He loved to fly. He was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and then he flew commercial planes for 29 years. So he had a little bit of experience. He was an expert. He's what we would call an expert. So one day he's flying his commercial airline, right, after decades of flying, and these birds fly into his engine, and the engine lights on fire and goes out. So he has to make an emergency landing on the Hudson. Now this guy that had all of this experience, right, like decades of experience flying, does these interviews, and they ask him, so how did you land the plane? You know, what's the first thing you did? Can you guess what the first thing he did is? He used his emergency checklist. Now, why do you need an emergency checklist if you've had 40 years essentially of experience? So you can put it in the chat box. Oh, so you have 40 years of it because you don't have 40 years of, that's funny. Okay, yeah. Okay, so people are saying you don't have 40 years of crashing experience. Right, but you have 40 years of experience, and the reason that he went to his checklist is because when that old brain takes over, you cannot think clearly. Everybody needs to have a checklist. Everybody should have a checklist. Parents should have a checklist. Children should have a checklist. When you go into that mode, you say you go for your go-to coping tools. So if you're with me, please type checklist rock. Checklists rock. Okay, now we're getting to our this tool number 9 here, which is to practice self-compassion. You are super parents, super dad, and super mom, super educator if you're here, super coach, therapist. You're amazing. You're amazing. You're here learning on your off time, or maybe it's your on time, and you're still here to help your child, and trust me, they feel that love. They feel it. So please stop being so hard on yourself. Now I want to take a moment, we're going to jump into Q&A in a couple seconds. I just want to take a moment to tell you that a lot of parents come to me for additional help, and they say, you know, what can we do beyond what you're presenting here? And I always say, listen, there are 2 options. There's the kind of complex, you know, and then there's the more straightforward. I feel like when I was growing up, my parents took the complex route because there wasn't anything else. They would read books, and there were good books back then, you know, like early 80s, basically. But then they would lose so much in the translation of it. They didn't know how to teach me what they were learning properly. I wanted to make a more straightforward solution, which is why I created the GoZen Anxiety Relief Program, which is cartoons, essentially, that kids watch with their parents and they learn coping skills. Because I want to arm the next generation of our Jedi, right, our children, with the skills of resilience and well-being, and to do it in a way that's fun. So I'm just going to real quick blast through these modules that we have in GoZen. What is worry? We teach about worry affects your body, it affects your thinking, all those what-if questions. Watch out for thought holes, the 5 C's technique, which is a technique to bring you back to accurate thinking. The FAR method, which has to do with checklists, right, and specific checklists that we give in the program. And so we created this program. It's called GoZen. We're very proud of it. When you log into the program, you see a dashboard like this. And I wanted to do something special for the Psych Central listeners today, which was, you know, we started creating program after program after program, and what would happen is that once you bought one program, you went to the next, you would see something that said, this is locked, you're locked out. And no one really liked that. They would say, oh, I have to purchase another program and another program. So today we have something called Unlock the Dashboard for you, where you can get 3 of our award-winning animated programs and every other workbook and worksheet, every digital asset we have. So if this is something where you're looking for additional help, it's something I'm just doing for Psych Central, you can find that at gozen.com/PC. That's gozen.com/PC. And at the bottom of that page are also all of the bonuses that I referenced earlier. And so with that, I would like to open it up to Q&A. I think I went a little bit over the time that we were looking to go to, but I would like to open it up for Q&A. I'm so honored that you're here with me right now. I am absolutely happy to answer any question, and if it's out of the scope of my expertise, I'll absolutely also let you know that, but I'm here for you, and thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Renee. That was amazing.
You're so welcome. Thanks, Zoe.
I cannot believe how fast that went, and I don't know how others feel, but I personally calmed down just listening to you. It was really good. So
Thank you
yes,
so much.
I would like to double up on that invitation for folks to type their questions into the question panel. And I guess I would like to start with one about any tips for parents that have difficulties with their anxious children disturbing their sleep in the evening time. What would you tell parents about that situation?
Right. So I think a lot of parents come to me both with their children having disturbed sleep and then, you know, they in turn, it's kind of a vicious cycle, have disturbed sleep, so the whole family is having sleep disturbance. It's funny. It feels like anxiety gets worse at night. I mean, I'll say it in a very plain way. And I think it's honestly because the days gone by, you're sitting with your own thoughts, and for those who have an anxious mind, those thoughts can be racing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's super important. We get very focused on what do I do in the moment? What do I do the second my child can't sleep? And it's like anything. We have to think about it like a sport, for example, right? You're not going to be able to throw a good free throw unless you've practiced off court. So it's super important to practice mindfulness exercises. So in easy ones, there's so many different ones. We have a ton of them on our site. You can practice before you go to sleep. One simple one, for example, is going over your 5 senses. So what do I see? What can I touch? What do I taste? What do I hear? You know, and kids can do that pretty easily. It brings you into the now, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get away from that, from the future thoughts and from the past thoughts, especially when we're going to bed. Another thing we can do, so if a child is like, listen, I've done the mindfulness stuff, it's not really going well for me, what else can I do? You can write down the worst case scenario, the best case scenario, and then the most likely outcome. Because our anxious minds go to the worst case scenario. That's very easy for it to, spit it out. But writing down the best case scenario and then the most likely outcome, and even assigning, for those who are, like to quantify things, little kids, even assigning probabilities to those. Well, maybe there's like a 50-50 chance that, the best thing will happen. So assigning probabilities can help as well. So those are 2 tips, but really, going to bed, creating bedtime rituals that go beyond, like I have a 2 and a 3-year-old, so I know all about bedtime rituals, brushing our teeth and reading a story and saying goodnight and saying I love you. But you have to integrate things that help the anxious mind and body into those bedtime rituals. And you have to do them when it's not bedtime at first, and then integrate them into bedtime. So those would be some of my suggestions.
Okay, that makes sense. When you say, if we could just sort of expand a little bit on the last comment that you made, to start to establish those routines before it's actually bedtime, can you give me an example of how you do that?
Yeah, you can do a couple of things. One is that you can practice some of those mindfulness exercises at different times during the day, okay, when you're not anxious, because you're more likely to remember them when you're not anxious, right? Because your mind is
Okay.
clear.
Okay.
And then you can also do role playing and it depends on the child. It depends. You have to get them into it, right? They have to buy in. So they're not going to, so if you do a role playing where you say, listen, we're going to go do this in your bedroom, even though it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're going to pretend that they have to buy in. It has to be, for lack of a better word, cool enough for them to do. And that onus rests on the parents to be able to create that environment and have that open connection where they're like, okay, I'm going to try this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That really made it more clear for me. And as you were speaking, Renee, I was thinking, you'd mentioned that you had a 2 and a 3-year-old. Some of the exercises, sort of, when you have to write things down, some of the cognitive processing sounds a little bit sophisticated for younger children. Can you sort of walk me through what ages these exercises are appropriate for? And I guess a
Yeah.
corollary to that is, at how young would a child be who can actually suffer from anxiety? Like, to really, like, babies? I mean, can you sort of
Yeah,
explain that to
yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. So anxiety can be seen in toddlers very young, from the
Mm,
age 2 on. It's hard, right, because there is obviously developmental stages where children have more fear of certain things and developmentally appropriate, right? But there are also signs of anxious toddlers that follow you around everywhere, can't leave, meltdown, are more sensitive than their 2, 3, 4-year-old peers. And so that's something where to discern, you'd really probably have to see a professional, but if you're feeling it, like I feel like my child might be more anxious than the next, that's something that goes through, I think, a lot of parents' heads.
mhm.
In terms of your question of, what ages are these exercise is appropriate for? It's such a good question. When we created these GoZen programs, we aimed for middle school. And I will tell you that they are being used from age 4 to age 20
Mm,
because they're universal skills. And really, it's a matter of changing the language. So for kids very young, creating songs, right? The worry doll, so like a worry character works very well. Creating a worry bug or like a worry character, that is something that works well. For kids that are a little bit older, we pull again more from pop culture. And so really it's a matter of just making it relevant to them. But I'll tell you
okay.
that we have seniors in high school that look at our animations, and the kids definitely look younger than them, but they're very forgiving of it because they say, I worry and I just want to know what the answer is to this,
Right,
tell me,
right.
help me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it's like anything in parenting, it has to be age appropriate, and that you apply a little bit of creativity to make things fit, sort of. Is that sort of
That's
accurate?
absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I have to ask this. When you were talking about laddering a little bit earlier, which I thought sounded like a really great idea, but when you said, try it with school avoidance, honestly, I'm having a tough time visualizing how that would work. Can you sort of walk us through that as an example of applying laddering?
There are some children, not some, there is a big issue or an anxious child, or it might be another issue, just absolutely refuses to go to school. They're
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, I am just not, just not going. I'm not experiencing this. I'm absolutely avoiding it. So the concept of laddering is to create baby steps. So if you're not going to go to school, can I get you to just put your backpack on? That's it. That's your goal for the day. I just want you to put your backpack on, And of course, that is a miniature step, and that's okay. Okay, so once we get past, okay, I can put my backpack on without having, the extreme anxiety. Now, can we get you into the car if that's how your mode of transportation to school? Let's go to the car. Okay, so then you're sitting with your backpack in the car, and then maybe you just go back into the house, and that's your step for the day. So you're creating baby steps, right? Until you have to really face what it is, the big thing. But you're gradually getting there. So it's the easiest way to think about it is you're not throwing a kid into the deep end of the pool to have them swim.
Right, right.
Right?
That
Yeah.
was that was great. Thanks. That really helped a lot. Um,
Sure.
actually, one of our attendees this evening wants to know if you have a practitioner wholesale offer, or is it best to send the clients directly to you to purchase the GoZen program?
We do. So if you go to gozen.com/PC, you will see that there is both a package for parents and there is a package for practitioners. So a practitioner is anyone using it professionally, therapist, coach, educator. So we have both, and they have different things in them. So for educators and therapists, we have extra worksheets and lesson plans and bonus videos. And so yeah, absolutely.
Great, great. Yes, and I do want to mention a comment, and I just can't believe how quickly the time is going. This is great, great material. One of our attendees said that they really felt connected with your words, and we're getting a lot of appreciation for what you've covered.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
so much. You know what? This is just coming from my soul. This is, when you're doing something that's your purpose because it just, yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I mean, we've only got a few minutes, but I'm personally curious. You were very generous in sharing your own, personal experience. I'm just wondering, Renee, did these tools that you've developed mostly originated, I guess, firstly out of your own personal experience and developed from that, or is it a combination of that, your education? Where did these things come from?
Yeah, it's a big mashup. It's a big mashup. So there's a lot of, if in the programming in the articles that I write, you will, if you're a trained professional, you'll recognize things definitely, like, oh, that's traditional CBT, or that's pulled, out of
Mm,
positive psychology research. There's usually a twist, and sometimes, frankly, I am just pulling from, I don't know, the global consciousness, or I'm like sometimes feel like I'm a sci-fi writer. I'm like, I think this is going to work. I think this is cool. So it's really a mix. I mean, in the beginning, I tried to be very research-based. I do have a master's in psychology from Penn. I'm like, we're going to be research-based, and we're going to do everything based on the research. But frankly, I'm so connected to that feeling of pain still, not in a bad way, but really in a reflective way of when I was a kid, that when I create something, I think to myself, would this have worked for me, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever?
mm-hmm.
And if I think that it needs something additional, I add something to it, which I think that's also science in a way. it's self-correcting, it's additive, and, you know, or maybe it's whatever anybody wants to call it, but that's how I create things.
Right. And how many years have you been, we've got like a minute, but I'm just curious. So
Yeah.
you've obviously had experience and feedback, you know, from others to be able to tell what's working well and, you know, to tweak a bit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
GoZen has been around for 5 years. I've been coaching for 10, and then I've been kind of doing things in different businesses for close to 20.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aging myself. Dare you, Zoe, at the end.
Hey, that's okay. That's okay. I could be your mother. I don't think people care. It's the wisdom. It's the Yoda-inspired wisdom that we're loving. Well, me personally. But anyway, my goodness. Well, Renee, speaking about loving this webinar, I'm so glad there's a replay because as is often the case, I know that I would like to see it again and check out the rest of your materials, including I would like to invite people to check out your blog, Stress Better. Now, would that cover a bit of the material as well or sort of enhance what we're talking about tonight, Renee? Or,
Absolutely,
yeah?
absolutely.
Okay. And the nice thing about a blog too, I guess I'm a little biased, but it's prose and it's short and you know you can read it and it sort of fills out things well for those of us who learn by, you know, reading, and I know we're different kinds of learners, but anyway, my goodness, I better just sort of wrap it up. The time has really flown. So before we say goodnight, I would like to remind everyone that the replay of tonight's webinar will be posted at Psych Central's YouTube channel later in the week, unless, as has happened once or twice in the last many years, something goes wrong technically, but it won't. I want to remind everybody that they can get their bonuses. Where again, Renee? Help me out here.
GoZen.com/PC.
There you go. Woohoo. I'm going to be running over there. Great. So please, everyone who attended live tonight, thank you so much. And to those of you who are actually listening to the replay and weren't able to make it here with us tonight, thank you so much for listening, and do check out Renee's work online. And of course, I'd like to thank Psych Central for graciously hosting us. And of course, I saved the best for last. Renee, our special guest presenter, thank you so much, Renee Jain.
Thank you so much, Zoe. It was an honor. Thank you.
Well, I do hope that we can have you back again at some point. I'm sure there'd be enthusiasm for that, for sure.
All right.
Yeah, and on behalf of PsychCentral.com and me, Zoe Kessler, thanks very much, everyone who was here with us, and we'll see you at the next one.